Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching Adorama TV, and this is my first look at the new Olympus OM-D E-M1X. But this isn't a camera to be tested in this nice safe studio environment, and that's why I've come here to Skateram to photograph Jack, who's an amazing BMX rider. Now, Olympus have only given me this camera recently and been super clear about its use. It's a pro-spec camera aimed at the action photographers out there. So that's sports, wildlife, that kind of thing. My initial impression was that this is a big camera, and compared to my other Micro Four Thirds cameras, it certainly is. But when you compare it to the sort of camera this wants to compete against, well, it's not actually that big at all. And the size it is makes it really comfy. I had no problems using this all day. There's loads of things here that pro shooters are really going to appreciate, like the fact that the integrated battery grip has 2 batteries in there, and then there's all the extra buttons, things like an ISO button, a white balance button, there's even a button on the back to select which memory card you write to on the fly. Speaking of memory cards, the E-M1X has 2 SD card slots, and both of them take the faster UHS Type 2 variety of card. Now that's the one you want to go for, because this is one fast camera. To give you some idea of how fast, this camera can do an absolutely mind-blowing 60 frames per second in full RAW, but that is with both focus and exposure locked. So that's probably not much use for most action photographers. However, 18 frames per second with continuous autofocus and exposure is really impressive. And for me, I found that even too much. I kept it down to 10 frames a second. If you're into your action photography, then autofocus is going to be really important to you, and I found the E-M1X to be fast and accurate. But what really impressed me was its autofocus tracking ability. Even as Jack moves outside of my autofocus area, as he comes back round again, the camera picks him up and just keeps on going. I tried things that were more challenging, like getting Jack to ride towards me just using the standard continuous autofocus, and I really couldn't fault the camera's performance at all. To be honest with you, the only thing limiting this camera's performance was, well, my ability, and I'm pretty sure given a bit more time with the camera and tweaking some of its custom settings, I could get even better results than I got today. One thing I can absolutely count on is the British weather. And sure enough, the one day I get to play with the Olympus E-M1X, it's raining outside. Not that that's going to bother the camera, because it's sealed against weather far worse than we get here in the UK, but for obvious safety reasons, we had to keep Jack riding inside. The image quality from the Micro Four Thirds sensor was a pleasant surprise. Shoot at the native 200 ISO, and as you would expect, the images were clean and full of detail. Step it up to 1600 ISO, and there was a hint of noise, but honestly, the images were perfectly usable. 3200 ISO, there's definitely some noise in there and a little bit of loss of detail, but it wasn't too bad. 6400 ISO and above, well, things do go a little downhill from there. The Olympus E-M1X has a sensor that has around about 20 million pixels and 121 phase detect autofocus points, and that sounds fairly familiar. But there's loads of new things in here as well. For example, digital ND filters for landscape photographers, USB charging for anybody that's on the go, there's GPS, there's handheld high-res mode, and loads more. To get the full spec, check out the Adorama website, and you'll find the link for that in the description below. In my opinion, the pro spec, pro build quality, and probably pro price tag of the E-M1X isn't there just to showcase what Micro Four Thirds cameras can do. This really is a professional tool for professional photographers. It isn't aimed at everybody. You probably already know whether this camera is for you or not, and if it is, just go and buy it. You won't be disappointed. For everybody else, if just some of the technology in this camera filters its way down in the future to the sort of smaller consumer cameras, the sort of thing I tend to use, then that would be absolutely amazing. I'm Gavin Hoey, thanks for watching.